الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وبعد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. All right, we're going to wrap it up here today. Wrapping up Ramadan, and we're going to wrap up this very nice, beautiful treatise by the great Imam Ahmad ibn Ibrahim al-Wasiti, famously known as Ibn Shaykh al-Hazamiyin, great Imam and Zahid. And the last two sections of this text, we're going to look at page 21 through 24, avoiding bad company and focus in prayer. So the Imam begins here on page number 21. He says, upon you is to disassociate yourself from the people of frivolousness who constantly busy themselves with hearsay, and distance yourself from the people of vice and wickedness who have no favorable ambitions, nor do they manifest a single trace of consciousness of Allah Almighty. So here, extremely important. So far in the text, we've been working on our hearts. We've been working on developing a sense of khashya, or reverence. We've been trying to occupy time with the pious, spending time with the scholars and the saints, the students of knowledge, the worshipers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we have been trying to seek knowledge. We've also been preserving our chastity. And now, of course, we need to be avoiding people that would undo that. They will seek to undo that. And so he mentions here people of frivolousness, essentially people that are either wasting their time or they are indulging in sin. Wasting their time with meaningless endeavor, or worse so, indulging in sin. He says, with hearsay and vice and wickedness, lewdness and corruption. So you'll find, unfortunately, among even our own communities, people that's one of their, habits, is that they talk about others, they gossip and backbite, they spread lies and misinformation, and it can be very entertaining, it can be very engaging, it's very charged emotionally, and so it can be addicting. It's almost an addictive type of behavior. And the problem with that is, if this is what you busy yourself with, you can let a year or 2 or 3 or 4 years go by, and you will not find that you have benefited in the slightest. It's like with every issue that comes up, every community issue, every personal issue that gets brought into public light, it comes and it goes. And there's nothing really to build on. It's very sensational. And it feels like, even if you're putting a religious spin on it, it feels like you're doing something, but when you turn around after a year or 2 or 3, you're left with nothing to hold on to, because the issues die when the sensationalism dies with it. So there's a number of different ways or kind of categories of hearsay and community strife and individual discord, etc., that is brought out, when the latest story comes up about so-and-so or this community or that group, and we get overly invested in the sensationalism of it, and our emotions become, wrapped up in it. And we cannot help but want to, we have meetings and we talk and we call each other and we're writing on the internet and we're texting back and forth and we're posting on groups about who did what and who said what and what's the Islamic position, etc., etc., etc. But when the excitement, if you will, of that issue dies, the issue dies with it, and then you move on to the next one. And I've been a witness to this over quite some time. And I've seen a lot of time wasted, a lot of sin involved in it, even under the banner of, Islamic counsel or enjoining the good and forbidding the evil, etc. There's a lot of ways in which even a person of piety can try and justify some of these actions, when in reality, at the end of the day, when it's all over, at best, it's a waste of time, for the most part, the way that most of it is handled. Sure, there are cases in which you're required to jump in there and you're required to help steer and help guide. But at al-hukm al-ghalib, right? We're looking at the overwhelming majority of how things unfold and happen. This is the type of person that you should be avoiding if this is what they're involved in. They have no favorable ambitions, right? So this is key here. It's like their objectives are not lofty aims and objectives. If they were, they would be doing other things like pursuing knowledge, pursuing piety, pursuing development of community, a purification of the heart, purification of their community's hearts, servicing the community, helping each other. And then when these little issues pop up, they're more interested in extinguishing them rather than fueling the flames of strife and moving on, as opposed to allowing it to flame up, boil over, and then once that's finished, they're ready for the next thing to happen, the next sensationalistic, very exciting, tabloid type headline to hit their lives or the community. Then especially if you're talking about things which are sinful in nature, it says, run from these types of people like you would run from a lion that is chasing you. But be good to them by greeting them and taking them and talking to them politely. So here, this is for the pious person, the one that's trying to adopt the way of the saints, is that even though you acknowledge the danger of this type or this category of person, and you see the pitfall and you see the downfall and you see the blameworthy nature of what they're doing and the sinful nature of what's going on, you avoid them. He says, it's very descriptive, like run from them as if a lion is chasing after you. Run for your life. Run for your salvation. Run for the sanctity of your soul. But at the same time, you have to be polite, and you have to be kind, and you have to greet them. You have to be better. And Allah mentions in the Quran, He says, وَهَجُرْهُمْ هَجَرًا جَمِيلًا, and avoid them in a gracious way. In a gracious way. So, you still fulfill their rights that are obligatory. You still try and encourage them to come back to the truth and to sanity, to piety. You don't want to get down in the mud. Once the mud starts flying, everyone's going to walk out dirty. And there are many ayat and hadith that talk about how to deal with transgression and vice and wickedness. Idfa' billati hi ahsan, to repel an evil with that which is better. Allah asks the question, is an evil deed like a good deed? No, they're not the same. And when you're faced with evil deeds, you don't retaliate with evil deeds, but you always take the high road. You take the moral high road. It says, upon you is to befriend those who are pious and scrupulous in their speech, food, and dress code. The scrupulousness that is being referred to, al-wara', is essentially someone that avoids doubtful matters. They stay away from doubtful matters and what they talk about, what they eat, what they drink, what they wear, and their manners. They're very particular. He mentions here from different social classes like jurists, the impoverished, al-fuqara, if you will, those that are impoverished in need of Allah, as well as the mystics of Ahl Sunnah that are knowledgeable of the traditions and the pious predecessors' narrations and how little they are. So here we can find this concept of a person that is seeking piety, surrounding themselves with people that are more pious, people that are very scrupulous in nature, that they're very, very concerned to the point that they even avoid the doubtful matters for the sake of their piety. It's much like, what we're trained in personal and professional development when you have a goal you set yourself to achieve, then you surround yourself with people that have achieved that goal. If you want to reach a financial goal, then you surround yourself with people that have reached that same financial goal. Because not only will you get encouragement from them, but in the process you will get the pro tips and tricks on how to achieve it. You're likely to get some advice or find a mentor and someone that can help you navigate without spinning your wheels and wasting a lot of time. A person that, went down that path knows the pitfalls and knows the shortcuts. Or are there any shortcuts to take, if any at all? And they can give you that advice so that you don't have to waste effort and possibly become overwhelmed. The same thing goes for piety and religiosity. If you're seeking a religious existence or a pious life, then you have to surround yourself with those that you believe are more pious that can help you along the way. And that is certainly not done by being around the first category of people. People that are given to sin, people that are given to backbiting and tail carrying and stepping and trotting on people's honor and dignity, those that seek to unravel the community grasp and handhold. That type of person should be avoided in a graceful way. And we know very much the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he said that al-mar'u ala dini khalili, that everyone is upon the way of their associates, upon the way of their companions. You will adopt that way. This is a prophetic principle, that the people that you associate with, you will, 9 times out of 10, become like them. You will adopt their ways. So if, for example, you hang out with a bunch of homesteaders, they want to live off the land and they want to farm their own properties and they want to collect rainwater, eventually you're going to get into that and you're going to homestead. If you hang around with a bunch of homeschoolers, all they talk about is homeschooling their kids and how important that is, etc. Eventually you're going to say, look, this homeschooling thing sounds great. I'm going to become a homeschooler. Etc., etc. The next section here, this is where we're going to wrap up. The Imam talks about, it's on page number 23, focusing in prayer. He begins by saying, protect your heart from wandering about during prayer. Protect your heart. Notice this important thing. Protect the heart. And that's what should be present while in prayer. The body is there, and all of the prescribed movements and the prescribed statements and phrases and prayers that are to be made during the prayer are there. They're prescribed for your heart to be present. Essentially, the heart, because it's a very fragile vessel and very stubborn at times, it requires a great deal of attention, and sometimes it requires that you're almost imposing something upon it. You have to impose presence and reverence and awe upon the heart. And the movements and the sayings are there to help impose that upon the heart. Almost as if you're trying to bend the heart into ruku' when you bow your body. Almost as if you're trying to have the heart join the tongue in prayer when you're reciting Quran. Trying to unify the physical and the spiritual together. Almost as if you're trying to force the heart to prostrate when you place your head on the ground. And so this is the central focus of the prayer, is that the heart is present. He says, and strive to be present in front of your divine Lord, constantly praying. Right? That the heart is present in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you stand in prayer, know who you are in front of. And these are some of the ways in which you can achieve that. Is that you're mindful that, look, I'm not standing in front of my friend or my spouse or my children. I'm not standing in front of my boss even. I'm not standing in front of the governor or the president or the king. I'm standing in front of the divine. I'm standing in front of the divine Lord, the creator and master of the universe. When you recite in prayer, know that you are actually reading to your divine master. It's not a bedtime story. But what you're reading is not only to Allah, you're reading Allah's words. This is divine speech that you're reciting, the Quran. And so if you can try and keep that in your mind, at the forefront of your mind, it is more likely that your heart will be present. Safeguard your heart in prayer from the dangers of evil whispers, and be as if you are in front of an all-powerful, majestic, glorious king. He says, know the meanings of what you are saying and the splendor of who you are saying it to. This is another means to achieving closeness in prayer, is that you know what it is that you're reciting. You know the supplications, what they mean. And I'm not just talking about the mere translations of them, but we're talking about the more in-depth explanation of them and the impact of those words, the connotations of what it is that you say. That is very important to achieve presence of heart in prayer, is to know exactly what you're saying. Otherwise, it becomes very mechanical and it's very routine. It's like you just know what to do, you know what to utter, you just follow through the motions, and then you're done, and you walk away no better than when you started. And that's how you know if your prayer has plays a positive role in your life. And you can also take a basic litmus test of, do you enjoy prayer? Or is it something that you just feel obliged to do? And there is something to be said about that. I mean, at least you're fulfilling your obligations. It should not be that, well, look, if I don't feel like I'm just having this amazing experience, then I'm just not going to pray. I mean, it doesn't mean anything to me. It's not affecting me in the way that I think it should, so I'm just not going to pray until I get there. No. You should never abandon prayer. But you should take yourself to account and say, look, right now I need to do better. It needs to be better. It can be better. Prayer should be better, and so I have to work on it. But at least at the very minimum, you're fulfilling your obligation so that there's not a burden weighing on your soul. And so that's why it's important to seek these necessary means to achieving presence of heart, so that when it's time for prayer, you're actually looking forward to it. You're checking your clock. Okay, how much time do we have left? I'm ready for my next prayer. I mean, I was so fulfilled from the last one. It really brought me back down to my focus as a servant of Allah. It brought some clarity to some of the issues that I'm having. I realized that it's not that big of a deal, that life goes on, that we're all going to return to Allah. The failures of this life are nothing in comparison to the failures in the hereafter, so let's continue to strive towards the home of the hereafter, etc. Those types of feelings that come out of prayer, if you find that to be enriching, then you'll be ready for the next one. You'll be looking forward to it. It says, when you kneel in prayer, know that you are kneeling due to extreme submissiveness to the grandeur of Allah Almighty, and the same goes for when you prostrate. Be spiritually present when you are kneeling and prostrating. Fortify your heart from being inattentive in your prayer as much as you can. He says, if you do so, all of this, meaning that we've mentioned here, you will then be blessed with illumination and acceptance from Allah Almighty. Stay true to these advices, act upon them, and make them your spiritual principles in life. So here we have a handful of foundational principles, and this is the starting point. This is a great starting point to pursuing a life of piety. Hold on to this little textbook, refer back to it regularly. Just having like a resource, which I would consider even the table of contents, is a great benefit. Just open that up every once in a while. And you'll hopefully remember some of what we covered here, and it will serve as a great reminder. He says, make them your spiritual principles in life. This way you will have a better relationship with your Lord. I hope that with this you will be blessed with the good of this material world and that of the hereafter. Imam is having some high hopes for us here. We ask Allah Almighty, the most generous, to aid us in doing that which He loves and is pleased with, and to help us avoid doing that which He dislikes, what angers Him or does not please Him, and that He have mercy upon us all in this world and the next. All praise due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds. May His peace and blessings be upon Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the greatest of all the messengers, his family, his companions, the pious spiritual leaders, and those who follow him in good until the day of recompense. And with that, the Imam concludes his treatise with some supplications and prayers, sending salutations upon the Prophet ﷺ. And like that, wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabina Muhammad wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. We'll conclude there. And it was a true pleasure and an honor to share this short little text.
This was very good. Thank you.
Alhamdulillah. It was my pleasure. Until next year.